It is not her soul or even her chief engine. It has its great use while it endures. It helps us to use out of inertia. It contradicts many tamasic forces which would otherwise inhibit action. But the seeker, who has advanced far on the way of works, has passed beyond this intermediate stage in which desire is a helpful engine. Its push is no longer indispensable for his action, but is rather a terrible hindrance and source of stumbling, inefficiency, and failure. Others are obliged to obey a personal choice or motive, but he has to learn to act with an impersonal or a universal mind, or as a past or an instrument of the infinite person. A calm indifference, a joy, impartially, or a blissful response to a divine force. Whatever it dictates is the condition of his doing any effective work or undertaking any worthwhile action. Not desire, not attachment must drive him, but a will that stirs in a divine peace, a knowledge that moves from the transcendent light, a grand impulse that is a force from the supreme Ananda.
Okay, so he is discussing the theory that it is desire that makes action possible in the physical world. There is no doubt that there is truth to it, but it is not an absolute truth. Much of the work done in the universe is without desire. And when you speak of action, it includes everything, not only human action, but it can include also animal action, it can include even vegetable action. The tree grows, it's an action. Okay? So much of this is done without desire. It's a very interesting case, and we can discuss it a little bit. Which are the actions which are done without desire? Okay, we can see that. It's a very interesting discussion actually. So I'm going to read each sentence and let us see whether it is clear. Okay, it is a common error. So it's very common. Everybody thinks that if desire is not there, then you won't do any action. But that is only at the human level. And even there it's not fully true. But there is a large amount of truth in it because desire makes you immediately act. Okay? If you, it is that which impels you to action. That is certainly true. Otherwise, if the desire is not there, you will be sitting in your easy chair doing nothing. But suddenly somebody comes and says something which is attractive to you, okay? Say, oh, they are selling fruit very, very cheap, the fruit that you like. Suddenly you will start getting up and running there because you want that. Okay. So desire is certainly a cause for action. There is no doubt about it. So it's a common error to suppose that action is impossible or at least meaningless without desire. Now we say very interestingly meaningless. That means to say there is no purpose. If you do some action without desire, there may be no purpose in it. Is there also a truth in that? It's very interesting. There is certainly a truth in it. Let us say sleepwalking. Okay? You suddenly get up in the night, you are asleep, but you get up, sleepwalking. You go to a cupboard, open the cupboard, and then close it and come back and again go to sleep. This is not at all very uncommon. Okay, there are many students of mine who told me that their parents have told them that in the morning this is what they did. Okay, so it's interesting, and that seems to be meaningless. What is the purpose of that action? Meaningless. So there is a truth in it that sometimes desireless action can be meaningless, no purpose. But it's not 100% sure. That's the whole point. If desire ceases, we are told action also must cease. There is a theory which Ranganath contradicts. But this like other too simply comprehensive generalizations, is more attractive to the cutting and defining mind than truth. The, the mind, which likes divisions and clear cut things, likes that. So it will long for this theory. They say, yes, yes, there's truth in it. But it's not really true. The major part of the work done in the universe is accomplished without any interference of desire. It proceeds by the calm necessity and spontaneous law of nature. There is a law of nature that acts. For instance, the wind is blowing, it's an action. Is there a desire in it? There's no desire. It's just blowing. Okay? A river is flowing. Okay? There's no desire. It's just flowing, doing its work. But someone can say, no, there is a hidden desire. It wants to go and join the sea. Okay? But this is a mental interpretation. There is no truth. Okay? Now, he's saying the major part of the work done in the universe is accomplished without any interference of desire. It proceeds by the calm necessity and spontaneous law of nature. Okay? The sun is going around. Okay? Is there any desire? No, it's just a law, physical law. That's happening. Even man constantly does work of various kinds by spontaneous impulse, intuition, instinct, or acts in obedience to a natural necessity and law of forces without either mental planning or the urge of a conscious vital volition or emotional desire. It's very interesting, but I would ask all of you to think of actions in the physical world which is coming not from desire but from other sources. Okay? Meaningless. It's very interesting to see how and where it is like that. Always we can find a cause, and a cause can we could be interpreting as a desire. So it's not very easy to get examples, but you can try to get examples of this. Okay? It's an exercise worth trying. What are the things that work in the physical world that movement, and work without desire? That's an interesting thing. Often enough, now I'm reading the next sentence. Often enough, his act is contrary to his intention or his desire. Now that's very interesting. Okay? What he's saying. Sometimes we are acting against our own desire. Because there is a desire comes from the vital, but the mind will say this desire is wrong. Okay? So then you are acting contrary to your desire. Yeah? He is giving examples to show that desire is not the 100% cause of all action. Okay? This is very interesting thing what he's saying. Suppose someone tells you that go and get some, let us say, go and get some sweets, okay, for the family, you go and get it. But you know that sweet eating is not good for you and you don't go. So, although you like sweets, you're not going. You are acting against your own desire. Because the mind comes in and the body also comes in. Okay? The body also has a say in it. The desire always coming only from the vital. It may throw its shadow on the mind and the body, but mostly it's on the vital. But there's the mind which contradicts the vital, and there's also a body which contradicts the vital. So therefore it can happen. Okay? So, often enough his act is contrary to his intention or his desire. It proceeds out of him in subjection to a need or compulsion, in submission to an impulse, in obedience to a force in him that pushes for self-expression, or in conscious pursuance of a higher principle. there. So now he's talking of a higher principle. Okay? It's not desire, but a higher principle. Now, interesting question arises again. I want to do yoga because I want to improve myself and my consciousness. I want to make it purer. Now, is that not a desire? It's very interesting. Aspiration is a form of desire. But simply using that here pushes for self-expression in conscious pursuance of a higher principle. That is certainly a yoga. Or you are thinking that today there was a flood and many people have died. So let me go and help there. So that is how you are doing from an obedience to a force or higher purpose. But is there a desire in it? If the ego comes in, it becomes desire. But if the ego is not there, it is a action based not on desire. Ego comes in and says, I'm going to do a good work. Let me get benefit for it. Okay? Then it's a desire. It's a very interesting question, the whole thing. In so, desire, simply saying, is an additional view to which nature has given a great part in the life of animated beings in order to produce a certain kind of rajasic action necessary for her intermediate ends. Now, we can discuss this a little bit how nature is inventing or rather creating desire so that her own purpose is served. Now, nature certainly wants her species to remain in existence as long as possible. But that is not possible without food. So they have to eat. So she gives them greed. Okay? She gives them desire for food so that they go and eat and they don't die. If desire for food is not there, they may not eat. And if they don't eat, they'll die. So nature is very clearly doing that. One of the greatest actions of nature in this way that the species should continue is the sex urge that she puts into animals and men. Nature is doing that to further her own program, further her own plan. So desire comes from there. So Swami is saying desire is an additional lure to which nature has given a great part of the life of animated beings. Animated beings, animals, and human beings. I don't think animated beings includes trees and plants because animated means able to move. I think I'm not sure. Animated is life beings. So anyway, in order to produce a certain kind of rajasic action necessary for her intermediate end, but it is not her soul or even her chief engine. It has its great use while it endures. Desire is certainly forces action, no doubt about it. It helps us to rise out of inertia. So that is another thing. Normally, if the stones were only there, when the world was created, life was not there and mind was not there. Only matter was created, but matter is tamas. So now, if you have to grow out of tamas into something which is opposite of tamas, there has to be a, a cause, a reason for that. So then nature puts in desire. And then you start working out your tamas and go into rajas. So that is the function of desire in nature. But it has its great use while it endures. It helps to rise out of inertia. It, it contradicts the many tamasic forces which would otherwise inhibit action. Inhibit means prohibit. Okay? Laziness certainly will induce you not to act. But the seeker who has advanced far on the way of works has passed beyond this intermediate stage in which desire is a helpful engine. The one who is a karma yogin doesn't need desire anymore. He has got a much more uh, higher aim. Its push is no longer indispensable for his action, but is rather a terrible hindrance and a source of stumbling, inefficiency, and failure. For a yogi who is struggling to control his desires, desire is no more an advantage but a tremendous disadvantage. That's what Sylvia said. Others are obliged to obey a personal choice or motive, but he has to learn to act with an impersonal or a universal mind or as a part of the instrument of an infinite person. The infinite person in you is your self. The infinite person is a self. And the self is telling you what to do and what not to do. So, without desire, a calm indifference, a joyful impartiality, or a blissful response to a divine force, whatever its dictate, is a condition of his doing any effective work or undertaking any worthwhile action. This was a karma yoga. Not desire, nor attachment must drive him, but a will that stirs in a divine peace and knowledge that moves from the transcendent light, a glad impulse that is a force from the supreme Ananda. So very clear now what Siddha is saying. The vital that he is, the desire that he is talking about is a normal vital desires. Even when you are doing yoga, okay, there is a purpose and a motive, but that is not vital desire. That's more a will in the psychic or the mind. So, when Swami is discussing the vitality here, the desire, it is only that which is restricted to the vitality. Okay? Otherwise, you can always find a motive. And the motive is a desire. So, anyway, so we can go to the next one now in an advanced stage of the yoga. So, who will read? Sarika, would you like to read? If you have the text.
Yes,
Yes,
Ranga.
okay, go ahead, read.
In an advanced stage of the yoga, it is indifferent to the seeker in the sense of any personal preference what action he shall do or not do. Even whether he shall act or not is not decided by his personal choice or pleasure. Always he is moved to do whatever is in consonance with the truth or whatever the divine demands through his nature. A false conclusion is sometimes drawn from this that the spiritual man, accepting the position in which fate or God or his past karma has placed him, content to work in the field and cadre of the family, clan, caste, nation, occupation which are his by birth and circumstance, will not and even perhaps ought not to make any movement to exceed them or to pursue any greater mundane end. Since he has really no work to do, since he has only to use works, no matter what works, as long as he is in the body in order to arrive at liberation, or having arrived only to obey the supreme will and do whatever it dictates, the actual field given him is sufficient for the purpose. Once free, he has only to continue working in the sphere assigned to him by fate and circumstances till the great hour arrives when he can at last disappear into the infinite. To insist on any particular end or to work for some great mundane object is to fall into the illusion of works. It is to entertain the error that terrestrial life has an intelligible intention and contains objects worthy of pursuit. The great theory of illusion, which is a practical denial of the divine in the world, even when in idea it acknowledges the presence, is once more before us. But the divine is here in the world, not only in status, but in dynamis, not only as a spiritual self and presence, but as power, force, energy, and therefore a divine work in the world is possible.
So, in a very interesting para, again, it's quite subtle, some of the things. We'll see what he's trying to. We'll try to see what he's saying. In an advanced stage of the yoga. So now very clear, you have gone quite a lot, you have had many experiences, and you are not going to be tricked very easily by surface arguments. In an advanced stage of the yoga, it is indifferent to the seeker in the sense of any personal preference what action he shall do or not do. Okay? I can discuss this a little bit. Okay, suppose you are working in a department. Okay, and your work has been praised. Let us say. Okay, so you take pride in your work and you get attached to your work. But when they tell you, the authorities tell you that this work is not as important as another work, you go and do some other work in another department. Let us say, go and do something in the dining hall, where there is no credit for what you're doing, washing dishes, serving food. So you may feel that no, I want to do the work that I am doing. Okay, I am attached to my work. I know of many people in ashram who feel like that. They are attached to their work. They don't want to change the work. But seriously, if you are in an advanced stage of yoga, without any hesitation, you will change your work. If you are asked to do something else, you will do it. There is no question of it. Because he is not at all attached to the work and he is indifferent to it. So he can do anything that comes. He is indifferent to the seeker in the sense of personal preference, what action he will do or not do. Even whether he shall act or not is not decided by his personal choice of pleasure. So, who does? It's a divine that tells him what to do and what not to do. Okay? So, if they are told not to do anything, but just keep quiet, you don't get upset. There are many people now. I remember elderly people in the COVID year. Many elderly people are told not to come out. But those who are very much action oriented will find that difficult to obey. Okay? They want to work, okay? But you are told not to work, remain at home. So it will be difficult for you to do that. But if you are advanced stage of yoga, you will not bother at all about it. You will not be bothered that you are asked not to do anything. Always he is moved to do whatever is in consonance with the truth or whatever the divine demands to his nature. So if the demand is coming from the divine, the question of desire doesn't arise in him at all. And he is doing everything according to the divine impulse. Okay? The divine is telling him to do something and he does it accordingly. Always he is moved to do whatever is in consonance with the truth or whatever the divine demands to his nature. A false conclusion is sometimes drawn from this that the spiritual man, accepting the position in which fate or God or his past karma has placed him, content to work in the field and cadre of the family, clan, caste, nation, occupation, which are his by birth and circumstance, will not, and even perhaps ought not, to make any movement exceed them or to pursue any great mundane end. So, this is the wrong interpretation because the advanced yogi doesn't care what he is asked to do. It can be any work that the divine tells him to do. So, they say it is not necessary to do any other work. You remain in the field that you have been placed. Placed by whom? By your karma, by your birth, your circumstance. Okay? Suppose you are a carpenter, do only carpentry work, nothing else, there is no need. So they say this is a great misinterpretation. Remember, Sri Lanka was doing revolutionary work and he was suddenly told to leave that work and do another work. Go and bring down the supermind. Do yoga and bring down supermind. He has to change the work. So he'll do that without any hesitation. Actually, in the Uttarpada speech, he does say that there was a little bit of a resistance in the beginning, okay? Because you are attached to the work you are doing. Okay? So he says that. And later on, he realized that there was attachment to the work he was doing. So, since, I'm reading the next sentence. Since he has really no work to do, since he has only to use works for what? To grow in consciousness. Since he has only to use words, no matter what works, as long as he is in the body, in order to arrive at liberation, or having arrived, only to obey the supreme will and do whatever it dictates, the actual field given him is sufficient for the purpose. Okay? Once free, he has only to continue working in the sphere assigned to him by fate and circumstances till a great hour arrives when he can at last disappear into the infinite. This is a normal idea. So listen, to insist on any particular end or to work for some great mundane object is to fall into the illusion of works. It is to entertain the error that terrestrial life has an intelligible intention and contains objects worthy of pursuit. This is very interesting what he's saying. The argument being given is that the purpose of life is only liberation. The argument that Srila does not accept, he is discussing that argument. The argument that the ascetic says the physical world has nothing, no importance at all. So the work that you are doing, stick to the work that you are doing. There is no need to change any work. Okay? Because there is nothing. But if you want to change work because you feel, let me do something more, much better than what I'm doing, let me go and help others during a flood or help the doctors when there is an epidemic, then you are changing the work and you have got to desire. So don't do that. That's the argument of the ascetic. The Sridhar is saying this is not the right thing at all. So what he's saying is that if you do that, then you are giving some, the ascetic, ascetic is arguing. He will say that you are giving some value to the physical world where there is actually no value at all. So what you are doing is wrong. Of course, ascetic is wrong. Sridhar does not agree with that at all. But this is the argument of the ascetic. To insist on any particular end of the work.
Ranganath, can you explain?
Yeah, tell me.
Can you explain this a little more because I didn't get the point.
Yeah, I told you it is subtle. Okay. Sridhar is discussing the change of work. Okay. There is an argument of the ascetic. The ascetic is one who doesn't find any value in the physical world. Okay? He is the Mayavadin who says the physical world is Maya and you don't need to do any work. The purpose of life, the aim of life is to get liberation away from the physical world. Okay?
Yeah.
So, if this is the truth at all, it's not the truth, but it is the truth, then the world has no importance. And so therefore, you don't need to change your work. You just continue. Now it's clear?
Yeah, okay.
So, but Sridhar is saying this is not true. The argument goes further, the ascetic argument goes further, that if you are changing your work with a purpose that I will help the people who are in trouble, or I will do something for mankind, then you are giving some value to the physical world. And the Mayavadin doesn't want to give any value to the physical world.
Okay.
Now it's clear, no?
Yeah.
That's right. So, of course, Sridhar does not agree. Because Sridhar gives full value to the physical world. So, if you are asked to change your work, you will do it very happily. By that. That's what happened to Sridhar. Okay? All right. So,
now it is much more clear. Yeah.
Okay. To insist on, huh? To insist on any particular end or to work for some great mundane object is to fall into the illusion of works. You think that working is important. It is not. Because work is only a preparation for escaping from the physical world. It is to entertain the error that terrestrial life has an intelligible intention and contains objects worthy of pursuit. All this Srila is saying, he is not saying, he is making the ascetics say this. It's very clear. This is the problem with those texts. If you quote it out of context, okay, look at this last sentence. Okay. To insist on any particular end or to work for some great mundane object is to fall into the illusion of works. How can Srila say that? He will never say that. He is just giving giving you the theory of the ascetic. Okay. Okay. So you must be very, very clear when he began the sentence, he began the para by telling you that very often there is a misinterpretation. He is giving you the misinterpretation. So that has to be, this is a problem often in those texts. Once he starts arguing, which he does not believe in, he gives all the arguments for that against his own conviction. Okay? Then he will tell you what he said. Follow? The great theory of illusion, which is a practical denial of the divine in the world, even when an idea acknowledges its presence, is once more before us. But the divine is here in the world, not only in status, but in dynamics. Not only as spiritual self and presence, but as a power, force, energy. And therefore, a divine work in the world is possible. So, in other words, this is, there's something here which needs to be looked into. The great theory of illusion, which is a practical denial of the divine in the world. As I told you, the illusionist, the Mayavadin, the ascetic, does not give any credit or any value to the physical world. Divine is not here at all. But then what is Srila saying? Suddenly he introduces something which you have to think of. And I'll tell you what that is. But the divine is here in the world. No, the other one. The great theory of illusion, which is a practical denial of the divine in the world, even when in idea, it acknowledges the presence. So what's Srila saying? Srila is referring to Shankara. Okay? Shankara says that the Sarvam Khalu Brahman. He accepts that the physical world is also the divine. He accepts that. But he is also advocating to go up, leave the physical world and go up. Sannyasa is the greatest thing that you can do. So how does that? In other words, you can get the divine here, but in the conditions of the physical world. But if you want the unconditioned divine, the pure divine, then you have to go up. Okay? That's what he's saying. That's what he means by this one. Okay? But the practical denial, even when an idea, it acknowledges its presence. He is referring to Shankara. Okay? Shankara accepts the Upanishads. And the Upanishad says that the Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahman. So everything in the physical world is Brahman. So, yet he is supposed to be a Mayavadin. Actually, he is not a Mayavadin at all. But if you want the divine pure and simple, you have to go up. You cannot get the divine pure and simple here in the physical world. You will get the divine under the conditions of the physical world. That's what he said. Okay? So we read 2 paras, and now it's almost 8:30. So we can stop here today. There is 2 minutes. So what I'll do, I'll read the summary. Then it will become clearer. When the sadhana has reached an advanced stage, the work itself that has to be done, if at all, you don't need to do any work, is of no real importance. Since the sadhak is now open to the divine will, which decides everything, He personally wins or desires nothing. He is blissfully surrendered to the Lord in silence and does nothing. What work is to be done, whether work is at all necessary, that is all decided by the divine. Sometimes a wrong conclusion is arrived at that since the sadhak has been placed in a certain situation or profession in a family or caste, he should continue the same without any change in circumstances. Before liberation or even after, all he has to do is to remain in the same previous activity until his body drops off and he can merge into the infinite. The idea that he could now do a much greater work after liberation and realization does not find favor with his common erroneous theory, because to do works is to enter into the field of ignorance. Once again, of course, this view is not that of the infinite yoga. After all, the divine is here too in the physical world, even if it is hiding. The divine is indeed in the world, not only in status, that means static, silent behind all forms, but also in dynamic action. Even the physical action that you see everywhere, the divine is there behind it. That's reason. Therefore, the divine action in the world is indeed possible. Whereas the Mayavadis are saying not possible. Okay? So we stop here today and I'll make a note. There is no narrow principle. Let's start from the next Tuesday. Okay. Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.
Many more.
Thank you, Ranganath.